For decades, women vampires have made appearances in the big screen, each bringing their own interpretation of elegance, horror, and dominance. But no woman has ever commanded the screen, the story, and the legacy of vampires quite like Akasha. Played by the late Aaliyah, she wasn't just any vampire, she was the original, the most powerful, and arguably the most captivating vampire queen to ever exist in fiction. Today we'll be diving deep into why Akasha remains unmatched when it comes down to being the best vampire character ever shown in film and entertainment. Most vampire women in film derive their power from someone else, whether it's a king, an elder, or a curse. But Akasha, she is the source of vampirism itself. In Anne Rice's Queen of the Damned, Akasha and her king, Enko, were ancient Egyptian rulers. After an encounter with a demonic spirit, they became the first vampires, making her not only a queen, but the literal mother of all vampires. This alone sets her apart. Other vampire queens operate within the confines of an existing hierarchy. Akasha is the hierarchy. Her bloodline is the foundation of vampire existence. Without her, there would be no Lestat, no Marius, no vampire legends. This makes her divine in the vampire mythos, not just a ruler, but a literal god among monsters. When we talk about power levels in vampire mythology, we usually measure strength, speed, and mind control. But Akasha isn't bound by the traditional limitations of vampires. Let's break down her abilities and how they compare to other cinematic vampire women. Akasha is faster than any other vampire, able to move in the blink of an eye. While vampires like Selene from Underworld and Carmilla from Castlevania are incredibly strong, they still rely on combat skills and weapons. Akasha, on the other hand, barely needs to move to destroy her enemies. One wave of her hand and the entire groups of vampires are reduced to ash. In almost every vampire myth, fire and sunlight are the greatest weaknesses, but for Akasha, she is resistant to both. Not only can she survive in daylight, but she wields fire as a weapon. Unlike Selene or Carmilla, who still have vulnerabilities, Akasha is practically invincible. Most vampire queens use seduction as a tool, but Akasha's influence is beyond that. She doesn't just manipulate minds, she controls them. Lestat, one of the most rebellious and powerful vampires in Anne Rice's universe, is helpless against her. When compared to other woman vampire characters, this is what makes her truly unique. Akasha doesn't need to fight, she decides the outcome before a battle even begins. One of the most memorable things about the character of Akasha is Aaliyah. And I personally believe that one of the key reasons Akasha remains the greatest vampire queen is just not because of her lore or the power, it's because of Aaliyah's performance. Despite her tragic passing before the film's release, Aaliyah's portrayal of Akasha became legendary. She wasn't just acting, she embodied who Akasha was. Everything from her movements, inspired by Egyptian and Middle Eastern dance, made her seem inhuman. Every step, every gesture, every turn of her head exuded an eerie, hypnotic grace. She didn't need exaggerated effects, her mere presence made Akasha feel like an unstoppable force. Her soft voice, every line she delivered felt both a seduction and a warning. Aaliyah made Akasha feel truly ancient, like a being who had walked the earth for millennia, beyond human understanding. Despite Queen of the Damned being a flawed film, stated by many critics, Akasha remains its strongest legacy. Over 2 decades later, fans still praise her as one of the most captivating vampire queens in film history, because no one else had embodied a vampire queen with such raw power or elegance. Even compared to major vampire franchises like Twilight or Underworld, Akasha is unmatched in presence. No other vampire queen is feared, as revered, or as mythological as Akasha. While other vampire women are powerful, they still operate within the human emotions and limitations. Akasha, however, was something beyond comprehension, a force of nature, an entity that is both alluring and terrifying in equal measure. To truly understand why Akasha reigns supreme, let's examine how she compares to other iconic vampire women in cinema and pop culture. Selene. Selene is one of the most iconic vampires in modern cinema. She is a skilled warrior, an enforcer, and later an elder. However, while Selene possesses incredible strength and speed, she is still limited by vampire weaknesses, sunlight, silver, and the need for weapons to fight her battles. Selene is a survivor, but she's not a queen. Her authority comes from battle prowess, not divine rule. Compared to Akasha, she is still bound by the rules of her world. On the other hand, Carmilla is one of the earliest vampire queens in fiction, predating even Dracula. She is often portrayed as a seductive predator, weaving psychological horror into her influence over victims. However, despite her longevity in vampire mythology, Carmilla is still merely an aristocratic vampire. She may rule a castle, but she doesn't rule the world. Akasha, on the other hand, sees humanity and vampires as mere playthings, something she can shape as she pleases. Dracula's brides are often portrayed as mindless, ravenous creatures, bound to serve Dracula rather than rule in their own right. Even in versions where one of them is given more authority, they lack true independence. Akasha, in contrast, is not anyone's bride. She is the origin, the ruler, and the final say in all things. If Dracula were in her world, he would bow to her or be destroyed. Unlike most vampire rulers who seek power or vengeance, Akasha's vision was global. She did not just want to rule a kingdom, she wanted to reshape the entire world. Her plan was to exterminate most of humanity, leaving only a few as cattle, creating a new world order where vampires thrive and she reigns supreme. This sets her apart from all other vampire queens. Most are content with ruling in the shadows, manipulating from behind the scenes. Akasha, however, sees herself as a deity and acts accordingly. She doesn't just want to exist in the world, she wants to rewrite it in her image. But like every powerful character, there's always a weakness. Despite her godlike power, Akasha ultimately falls not because she is weak, but because she is too powerful. The other Asian vampires recognize that if she is allowed to continue, there will be no balance left in the world. It takes a united effort of multiple Asian vampires, including Maharit and Lestat, to bring her down, and even then, it is not a battle but a desperate betrayal. No other vampire character or woman in cinema history requires such an extreme level of force to be defeated. Most are slain by a singular hero. Akasha, however, requiring an army of the most powerful beings in her world to be stopped. Even in death, she remains a symbol of ultimate vampire supremacy.